Hello, welcome back to Reading the Decades with me and to this third, fourth, fifth installment of my What I Recently Read series. This is all about my favourites and the books that really helped me going through lockdown and helping me through this quite unprecedented, really weird time that we're living in at the moment. It's also quite a while ago that I read most of those books, so I can't give the most eloquent of reviews at this point in time anymore about them. And also in the last couple of months I lacked a bit the motivation of writing notes to my books, but I try to recollect from my memory as much as I can and try to bring to you what those books mean to me. I've already filmed a lot today. I've already filmed for the last 2 hours and spoke for the last 2 hours, so I'm a bit out of everything at the moment. So let's do it quite casually, and I hope for July I'll be back in a normal monthly wrap-up routine. But yeah, bear with me today here. But this video is a good one, or at least the books in it are good, so please don't go just yet. A very good book that also not inspired me, but helps me or motivates me for one of my novel ideas is Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. I have this edition here. It's translated from the Italian. It's a very short book. It only has barely over 100 pages, and this book is about Marco Polo in conversation with Kublai Khan, a Chinese ruler, and Marco Polo describes cities to Kublai Khan. But it turns out that whatever he is describing, it always goes back to Venice. He always is describing Venice basically, and this book is just about how we can talk about cities, how we can put cities or places into or group them into topics. For example, we have them here as cities and memory, cities and desire, cities and sign, trading cities, cities and eyes, cities and names, cities and the dead, and so on. And one of my novel ideas that I'm working on outlining at the moment, still very sporadically, is about places, and this really helped me thinking about a new way to think and reflect on cities. So Italo Calvino is just such an amazing writer and thinker, and this is such a quick read, but it has so much in it. Can really highly recommend this one, as all of the other books that follow in this video as well. But I mean, it's a short one, so I thought why not start with a short one. A very interesting one that I got just a few months ago, I think a year ago, I think exactly a year ago, from Canterbury, was or is the Marlowe Papers, a novel in verse by Ross Barber. So this one is set in the late 1500s, and I think also maybe the early 1600s, I'm not sure anymore. And it's about Christopher Marlowe, the playwright, but also not only a playwright, but also worked as a spy. He was an atheist. Is it atheist? Atheist or atheist? Atheist, I think. A lover, a killer. So he had quite an impressive, interesting life. And there's also the theory that Christopher Marlowe and William Shakespeare are one and the same person. And well, this book plays with that idea and plays with the life of Christopher Marlowe, and it is all written in verse. So this book is not only interesting in its story, but also absolutely interesting in its language and in its realization. What I really enjoyed as well with this book is you have in the end a notes section that goes into detail about certain phrases, certain historical notes, certain characters that obviously are historical figures. So you really get a lot out of this and learn a lot from it as well. It gives a very good bibliography, so you can read up on the whole topic on not only Christopher Marlowe but also on the other people that get mentioned in the book. And what I absolutely enjoy is you get an author's note that explains how the author tried to translate or make Elizabethan English available for us readers in the 21st century in this novel. So there are words that got used that obviously didn't exist in Elizabethan English, or that had to be a bit more explained to us now in the 21st century. So it really focuses on the use of language in so many different ways. Super interesting. And extremely interesting is as well that this book was written as part of a PhD. So super interesting to read up on everything that surrounds this book, as not only as a story, an interesting story, whoever is interested in that, but the whole book as a project. And I'm very, why didn't I read that earlier? Seriously, why didn't I? And it's really a book I want to reread again. Like all of those books I show in this video are candidates to get reread many times during my life. A very good non-fiction book I read was The Woman Reader by Belinda Jack in, was it January, February, quite a few months ago. I read Why Women Read Fiction, it was called, I think, which was about a study, or the conclusion of a study. The author sent out a questionnaire to women about their reading habits, and she wrote the book about it, and it was quite interesting but also lacking in so many areas. This one is very good to compare the other book with. So if you're interested in reading about women readers, read this one. This is an absolute gem. It doesn't have good reviews on Amazon. People find it too dense. It is dense, but this is what I want from my non-fiction books. I don't want anybody explaining things on 30 pages that you can tell me in one sentence. This book is straight to the point. It talks about the woman reader from the beginning, and you learn things that you haven't learned at university. I mean, I studied literature and linguistics, but I never learned the things that I talked about in this book. So you definitely fill in a huge gap with this book. It is so interesting. You learn so much. It is so well written because it goes straight to the point. It is extremely dense because of that. But I mean, you really get a lot of bang for your buck basically with this book, because you get 300 pages worth of limitless information. It's interesting. It teaches you new things. It's curious. It has facts in there that surprise everybody. I think even if you are very well read on that topic, you will at least learn a bit of new information from this one. I really enjoyed that one, and I took lots of notes on this one too. I don't have them with me today because maybe this book is also a candidate for having a whole video about that, or making a comparison video with the other book about why women read fiction, and talking about those books together in that video. I think I could go in a very, very interesting discussion about those books in comparison, but can highly recommend this one. You have to take, if you're not really a non-fiction reader, maybe read this book in very tiny chunks, because you get so much information from it. And yeah, but I can just recommend it. Like, everybody who's interested in reading, every woman reader, and also obviously every male reader, especially a male reader, should read this book. Then all the craze started about Hilary Mantel again in the beginning of the year with a new book coming out. And I wasn't sure, and her books are around for so long, and in the end I bought all 4, and I'm so glad I did. This book is about the Tudors, especially. It's about the rise and life of Thomas Cromwell, and it very, very much focuses on Thomas Cromwell, his involvement in Britain, or even in Western culture, I'd say. Wow. Wow, the language, like Hilary Mantel can write. I love the language so much in this one. I was surprised because I like historical fiction, but I've never been interested in reading about Thomas Cromwell, and I think it's very hard to decide as a woman to write about a character like Thomas Cromwell. It was marvelously done. And also, not only that, I also just enjoyed the story itself, and what also helped me a bit was the reference to the plague we have during that time, and being confined to households, and yeah, it was just, I think it was the perfect time to read that one, but I wished I would have read it earlier. So at this point in my life, I could have done my 3rd or 4th reread already of that book. In the beginning I thought I'd only read Wolf Hall because it stands quite well on its own, but then I decided to also bring up the bodies, and I read it, and I enjoyed it as much as the first one. Maybe I think the first one is my favourite. I enjoyed that one nevertheless. I'm now also intrigued to read the 3rd one, but I think I'll wait until the 3rd one comes out in paperback, so I have them all together. I was thinking about getting them all in hardback because I had all those nice hardback editions out, but I didn't know if I liked them, so I got them cheap as a paperback, and now I'm thinking about, do I get them all as a hardback? And they're also coming out with a box set with all of those 3 books, so maybe I'll splurge on that, I don't know yet. But yeah, it's super interesting to read about the characters, how Hilary, or those historical figures, how Hilary Mantel describes them. I really enjoy how she describes domestic scenes, houses, gardens, fashion and fabrics. Like, she goes so much more beyond the characters than just their plain personality and how they act, how they react to things. She really goes into the material context of a character, And yeah, wow, just wow. And now I'm also interested in reading other works by Hilary Mantel. I think she's mostly known for Wolf Hall, probably, especially now after the third book got released. But yeah, Hilary Mantel is definitely my discovery of 2020 as an author. Another series and also another author of 2020 that I discovered is, and I don't know if I pronounced that name right, I'm very sorry, Cixin Liu. Is this the first book in this trilogy is called The Three-Body Problem. It's been out on the market also for quite a while. And I always thought, like, when I heard about it, yeah, it sounded interesting, but I've never been a big science fiction reader. But recent times made me venture out and leaving my, although we really need comfort zones at the moment, it made me venture out of my comfort zones, at least reading wise. And also I needed stories about changing the change of the world, so Wolf Hall was quite playing into that, because society and the world quite changed a bit with the happenings happening in that book. And this one is about the world getting in contact with, or getting contacted by a different society from outer space, from a different planet. The book is basically, this planet has 3 suns that don't evolve around the planet in a structured elliptical way how we are used to it in our solar system. So those 3 bodies are very different in their mass, in they're very erratic in their ellipse around the planet, and the civilization living on this planet experiences long periods of darkness, long periods of heat, and one day is all going to end because of how the body's gravity sucks how the bigger mass obviously sucks in the smaller mass. So they find the Earth and they're going to set out on a journey to the Earth. They will arrive in 400 years. And the story deals with how society on Earth starts to prepare for the arrival. I loved this one, and after reading this I also read the second book. The same with the Wolf Hall books, I haven't read the third one yet. This one is called The Dark Forest, where the story neatly continues, and so interesting, it's so dense, and it has so many scientific ideas and facts in there that makes you really think about it. And I've never been a person that read lots of science fiction to begin with, but science fiction that is so much based on, or that is so much more based on the science aspect than the fiction aspect, and I really enjoyed that one. And I think this author just has an incredible mind. Oh my god, that is so good. It's so interesting, it's so good, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about the things that I got talked about in this book. I'm coming from the humanities, I'm not a natural scientist, so but it's so interesting to read up on that. It's so interesting to go beyond the fiction of those books. So when I finished the Three-Body Problem trilogy, I'll definitely also read Chichindu's other books, because he's just an amazing author. Amazing. I'm so impressed. And then the best book, I think, so close to my heart. So, well, this book deserves its own video basically, because it also means a lot to me personally with my biographical background. It is Nino Haratischvili's Das achte Leben für Brilka. I read it in its original language, German, but the translation, The Eighth Life for Brilka, was just nominated this year for is it the Booker Translation Prize? What is it called? I don't know what it's called anymore, but there was like, this book came out and lots of people read it and lots of people loved it. It didn't win, which I think is a shame, because this book is massive. I think it had 1,300 pages. To translate that, and especially from German, which is hard to translate. Wow, I'm so sad it didn't win. But this book, wow, this book is a true Jahrhundertroman. Not only because it's set over a whole century, but also because it is one in a century. You can't write a book like this every, I don't know when. This makes me still so speechless. It tells the story of a Georgian family from 1900 to the early 2000s. It talks about Europe in the 20th century. It is so close to my heart. I've seen that around when it came out, when I lived in Germany, and when did it come out? 2014, I think, something around that point in time. And when it came out, I've always seen it around, and I always thought like, yeah, it sounded interesting, but I never picked it up in the end. And it took a translation in a different country to make me interested in this book. I think everybody who's read it so far is impressed by it, and I think if you are somebody who has a biographical connection to what is talked about in this book, then this book just reaches your heart and has an impact on your life. And I'm so interested in also reading the translation of this. I want to reread this book, but I think before I reread the German edition, I'm really interested in reading the English translation of that. Obviously, at the moment, I'm a bit like, I don't want to buy a book 2 times. So I'm waiting. If I come across The Eighth Life for a good deal, then I'm going to pick it up. This book is a description of our past living in Europe, being somebody, being European, being from the continent, being from the East, living in a world that got divided between communism and capitalism, getting divided in. It's just, I should have thought more about what I'm going to say about this book before sitting down here and talking about this. And I think I'm going to make a whole video on this book, because this book just deserves to be talked about in depth, with collected thoughts, not just rambling how I'm doing it right here after I've already talked for 3 hours now, I think. And also I think it would be very interesting to compare the German original to the English translation. And I think that could be the whole approach to this book, comparing it, those two the original and the translation. So yeah, I think I have to think a bit more about this, coming up with an idea how to talk about this, how to approach this in a video, because there's so many approaches you can choose. And please read this book. If you're a bit intimidated by the size, the English translation is obviously a bit shorter than the German one, because Germans like to talk in long sentences, but you get sucked into the story so quickly. When I started reading this book, I wasn't sure if I could commit to so many pages, and it's written so small. But now, and after I finished that, I thought, wow, I want to dive in again. I want to read it again straight away, which I didn't do, but yeah. And also this book, it was the perfect time to read it as well, because it really helped me through lockdown again. First of all, it's a big book, you have a lot of time at the moment for reading that, but also because it talks about all the difficulties that Europe faced in the 20th century, especially the eastern part of Europe. It really helped not losing perspective in our current times. It was giving hope. You felt connected to other people going through a very rough time, and also thinking about other people that had it so much harder than the situation for us is at the moment. And yeah, so if you're still feeling intimidated by that book, there is no need for that, because the story sucks you in, and it just flies by. You just live through that book for a while, and when it's over you think like, wow, did I really read that? It felt such a short time. Also, I'm definitely gonna read more by her. I already have 2 other books by her on my wish list, so let's see when I get around to them. She has another one that is quite a big one. I like big books. And this one really, I think this one is one of my all-time forever favorites, and I hope also, as with the other books, that in the coming years of my life I'm going to reread this a couple of times. So those are all the books that made me during lockdown, basically during the coronavirus pandemic. Those are all the books that made me so far in 2020, that impressed me, that became my favorites, that inspired me as a reader and writer, as a human being, as a European, as a German, and as a Brit, and as a YouTuber, as a booktuber, as somebody who's reading the decades. And I hope you're at least interested in looking into these books and considering reading them as well, because I can just recommend them not enough times. And I hope I see you soon, and until then, a very happy reading.